Greetings, everybody. It is Napalm Dawn on G4G on YouTube. Today's topic for this video is going to be ranking the Spec Ops heroes in Season 1 of Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux. We're going to be ranking them on a scale of 1 to 10 with some caveats for people who have very different PvP and PvE implications, or applications, actually. This footage is filmed in beta 5.6, which is a closed beta that is available only to the testers of the Redux project. The internal testing team are the only ones who have access to this particular beta. Beta 6 is not available yet. There is no ETA as of yet, so do not ask me. The most recent publicly available beta is 5.2, which will be linked down in the description. If you want to learn more about the project, you can follow the links in the description to Discord or Facebook and find out more about the project there. Do not ask about mobile versions of the game. The only mobile versions of the game are those that can exist on Steam Deck or Windows handheld devices like the Legion Go or the ROG Ally. They are touchscreen compatible, so if you do have one of those, such as a Steam Deck, Ally, Legion Go, MSI Claw, etc., you can play Redux on those devices and actually use the touchscreen for it, but there is no plans for a Android or iOS or Chromebook version, so don't even ask about those. And again, do not ask about 5.6, because it is a closed beta. It is not available to the public, and there is no ETA for beta 6 as of yet. So that is the established ground rules for this. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the Spec Ops in order and discuss the hero that comes from it, and we will rank them on a scale of 1 to 10. So Spec Ops 1 is, of course, Mockingbird. Mockingbird had a very unusual recruitment method in that you needed to get 15 stars in her Spec Ops in order to recruit her. So that is 5 stars in 3 missions. Really didn't have a lot of tasks. Could be challenging for newer players, as their roster might not be particularly deep. At that point in time, there was also a Scrapper on Forced Infiltrator fight in there, where you had Scrapper Hammerhead up against Black Widow, who for you is most likely an infiltrator. A limited amount of heals are available at the time. It can be a challenging Spec Ops, but certainly one that acts as a good milestone for testing out your roster. Of course, eventually she would become Nurkod, which was one of the worthy. But when we are talking about Season 1 content only, we will not be discussing any worthy uniforms. She has some solid setup in which she likes to put out pressure point debuffs and then exploit them through Paragon exploitation. She can switch classes when an attack is coming in, and she does actually have a chance to gain an extra turn when she changes classes. So if you set her up with somebody who is not protecting, you have a chance to get a lot of extra turns. She is a bit crippled if you have a protector on your team, like Colossus or a Cap, where the agent is protected, because then chances are she's likely never really going to get hit. She has an amazing setup in the fact that Twin Strike, Pole Vault, and also Critical Intel set up for really, really, really good Mocking Blow hits. She didn't see the most amount of use in PvP back in the day, so overall I would rate Mockingbird a 7. You can give her some pretty good pressure point debuffs from other people, including another Spec Ops hero we're going to talk about, Havoc, along with some agent gear. So there is some definite things that can set her up for good Paragon exploitation. She also would eventually go on to like the momentum generator because she is melee. And interestingly enough, only one of her abilities is classified as unarmed. So the Dragon's Foot, or the Steps of Shu Lao, doesn't really help her that much. Um, I guess it's considered unarmed because even though she uses her pole to vault her during the attack, the contact is actually made through unarmed, whereas Twin Strike and Mocking Blow, she is definitely armed for those. So I kind of find it interesting that they consider this one unarmed, but it's probably because of the actual contact being made. So Spec Ops number 2 features Emma Frost. Now, in this particular save, I haven't recruited Emma because I have her recruited in a different save, but I actually could have earned her on this particular save. What can you say about Emma? I mean, you know the scores are definitely going to be very good for her. Mental Anguish did a lot of damage, and in PvP, the enemy AI was not smart enough to clean it or remove it with a recharge. It does actually mean that two of her abilities are sort of kind of contradictory to each other. I believe if you were to psychic tap somebody and then stun them on War Diamond before they get their turn, I think the psychic tap would fall off. It's not too often you would get two of those attacks on somebody in the same turn. However, being a tactician against the blaster, it certainly is conceivable. She has an interesting thing in which I believe if she follows up or counters an attack, actually, no, it is Psychic Tap. Yeah, when you have her in the Infiltrator form, her counter is a Psychic Tap. She got super, super strong again in PvP, especially when paired up with Phoenix 5 Colossus, when that Infiltrator ISO got introduced to the game that said, hey, Infiltrators now pre-counter before the attack actually lands. So if somebody was targeting Emma and her Infiltrator bonus was up and she saw the attack coming, she would land a Psychic Tap mid-attack. When the attack would finish, they would immediately take the Mental Anguish damage, which would be huge. It was a real tough time in PvP because her passive of Diamond Body really, really increased her resilience. So she was very, very tough to take down. Of course, Colossus protecting her from a lot of attacks meant it was really tough to actually get to her. So you were often dealing with a lot of psychic taps coming your way. Now, an AISO and an EISO, they came around later in the game, so that kind of doesn't really super affect our rating, but her base kit of unlocked potential, basically being a morale boost, restoring stamina to everybody, mental trauma, reducing damage of the next attack. So she had really good single target boss effectiveness and really, really good PvP effectiveness. I would rate her as an 8 overall, and I would rate her as slightly lower in PvE applications and give her a 7. She's not great wave clear. Mental Trauma does do some reasonable damage because it hits 8 times and it reduces damage coming in. She really, really shines in single target boss attacks, but if you are doing what some games might call mobbing or farming or just a lot of, AoE threat clears and everything, Emma falls down a little bit, but she's very good on single target and, of course, was very good on PvP. Having a rather consistent stun every 2 rounds is solid. Psychic Tap was great damage. Removing debuffs and raising energy and a morale boost all in one little quick action, which she could actually use on herself. Very, very good. But in, PvE, when you're trying to find a fast way down through AoE mobs and everything like that, yeah, Mental Trauma is okay, but Psychic Tap sort of falls down a little bit. The War Diamond stun, though, pretty solid. The next Spec Ops hero that we have is Spec Ops number 3, which gives us Magic. Magic was one of my all-time favorite characters in the OG period of MAA. Like the sword attacks, like her animations, like her sounds. Getting hit with her attacks sounds really good, really fits the swing. Just combat-wise and what's done with her sprite and everything, I always really liked it. She had a passive of a chance when attacking or getting attacked to summon eye bites. She came pre-installed with a Phoenix 5 kit and then would gain another uniform later that would take the Phoenix 5 kit away. More on that in a moment. Allies have a chance to unleash Phoenix power each turn, deals additional fire damage to enemies when attacking or attacked. Good for pyrophoric builds. Soul Sword and Stepping Disc each give her a soul charge. Being a scrapper, if an infiltrator was around or you had flanked, she could super accelerate. Her entire kit really is based on having 2 of her soul charges up. And what you can do is Stepping Disc into somebody and then follow up with a Soul Sword. Stepping Disc is stealthy. It puts out pressure points, which could be exploited by the Soul Flare. Or you can do a double Soul Sword and get your 2 charges that way. That one is better if you're going for the 2-stack Unleash Hell. Personally, my recommendation is if you're going for single target, try to Stepping Disc into somebody and then get the follow-up with Soul Sword, be it flanked or scrapper bonus. Soul Flare not only exploits attrition, which comes from her Unleash Hell, it also exploits Paragon debuffs, which comes from her Stepping Disc. That's why I'm saying that Stepping Disc into Soul Sword is a really good opener if you can get it done. If you're worrying more about AoE and everything, I would go double Soul Sword into Unleash Hell. Really good as a scrapper, really good with flanked. The fact that she gives you the ability to either rip it up with a big AoE attrition debuff, one of which is Soulfire, which removes buffs when it goes out, or a big single target, I think makes her extremely versatile. I would definitely give her an 8 out of 10. Fun sounds, fun video, fun animations, fun audio from her. Very good kit where she can go into AoE or go into single target. Also perfect as a scrapper and perfect if you can give her flanked from somebody like Cyclops, being a fellow mutant. So definitely 8 out of 10 for her. Up next, we have Spec Ops number 4, Ghost Rider. This may be one of my more controversial rankings on this list. I'll give you a little bit of suspense there, but I think you might be surprised at the rank I give him. He has Hallowed vulnerability where he's vulnerable to Hallowed weapons, but that actually came from a patch later in the game. So we're going to throw that out, not really talk about that, and consider that a con against him because that happened later. We're trying to talk about Season 1 context, which is why we did not talk about this uniform. I actually consider this uniform a bit of a downgrade, both visually and ability-wise from Magic's P5 kit, which is her default. For Ghost Rider, immune to burning, halves damage from non-magic attacks, so that is really good. Essentially, most attacks are going to do less damage to him unless it's a magic attack. 50% chance to survive being KO'd from attack is solid. Applies Sin to any enemy that attacks him. That reduces defense. Damnation Chains changed throughout the course of its time. It originally did burning on the first one, and I think it went burning, Dark Void, Soulfire. It changed at one point to be Dark Void, Poisoned, Soulfire, in that order. It gives the enemy Sin, Penance Stare, consumes all stacks of Sin to do extra damage. Penance Stare does hit very hard. You have Highway to Hell, and I'm sure that's going to make you think of AC/DC in your head right as you do it. One enemy gets Melt Armor, but everybody gets Soulfire. Another one. Everybody gets another one. Soulfire is a great debuff to put out because of the fact that it takes away buffs. You have the quick action Burnout, which says he gains vengeance stacks equal to the number of sin effects on all enemies. Vengeance does increase his attack. I am actually going to give him a 6 because I think overall he's kind of mostly because he doesn't have the most amount of synergy with Sin, which is one of his big things. If you go into some of the Spec Ops gear that you get when you get him, you do have some Sin usage in there. And believe it or not, in sort of a little bit of a Pokemon piece of trivia here, he is one of only 2 things in the game where he has damage that is classified as Shadow. So his damnation chains is Shadow, along with the Hand of Fire or Hand of Shadow and Flame or something like that. It's the Black Fist agent weapon with the spikes on the knuckles. They are the only 2 things in the game classified as Shadow. And that's just a little piece of trivia there. There's not really much that leans into Shadow. There's nothing that like exploits Shadow damage or increases Shadow damage. It'd be nice if the development team for Redux could introduce some synergy with Shadow in some original characters. I don't know who would fall into that category, though. Vengeance can get kneecapped because the maximum amount of sin is 7 stacks per character, and then times 3 for 3 enemies, so 21. However, if somebody protects against the attack, it only consumes sin from the person he hit. So like if Captain America jumps in the way of the attack, he does not get the 21 stacks of sin. He would only get 7 because it would only get removed from one person. It is a really, really, really long debuff to stack to max and everything. He can get accelerated by Spider-Woman, and it's one of the best things I would recommend because he applies Soulfire to targets that are poisoned, and Envenomed from Spider-Woman counts as that. So being able to accelerate his damnation chains right over to adding debuffs because the poisoned is really good. As a scrapper, getting multiple hits from damnation chains is solid. It increases the rate at which you go through the path of damnation. But, you know, kind of overall, I find him a complicated and long setup to do max damage. And while Penance Stare can do a great deal of damage because it is a psychic attack and it's hard to protect against, he's really, really tough to accelerate. Of course, he would go on to be a worthy, but that is not Season 1, and I also do not think he is one of the strongest worthy. Next up is Spec Ops 6, which is Valkyrie, of course, one of the Shield Maidens of Asgard. Not exactly related to the MCU movie Valkyrie that we know about. However, in one of the flashback sequences that MCU Valkyrie talks about, you do see what I would consider to be classic Valkyrie dying. And part of that combat, she's Asgardian, so she's immune to a good amount of debuffs. Gains health when an ally is KO'd or saved by Deathwatch. Protects allies that are low on health from single target attacks. Will not protect targets that have Deathwatch on them because the whole point is she wants them to die and then come back. So she regains her own health. And she will not protect if already low on health unless Deathwatch is active. So she is like a very complicated protector. Gear or Gear exploits exposure, which is put out by Flight of the Valkyrie. It is a stealthy summon attack, so she more than likely can get this off without any issues. She shuts down infiltrators. She accelerates a damage from her own level 1. Dragon Fang, believe it or not, is a electrical attack, so it has some good synergy with Thor. This is where Deathglow comes in, and Sacrificial Blessing puts Deathwatch out on allies. I think it says it's only a 70% chance to happen. If it was 100% chance, which she does accomplish through an ISO later on, that is really solid. She is your typical standard resurrector. She goes by the game's rules, like Phoenix, like any of the agent gear. Her reses do not break the rules of the game. They stay firmly confined within it, unlike the phylactery, which can break the game. She's pretty solid because she has a summon attack that sets up her own level 1 to exploit. Having a level 1 with no cooldown that does the exploitation is solid, but overall, she is just kind of basic. I would give her a 6, similar to Ghost Rider, maybe even a 6.5. The reason why you see some of these so low is the next character we're going to talk about for Spec Ops number 5 is because it's Havoc. This dude, I'm going to tell you right now, 10. Absolute 10 out of 10. This dude is one of the first really, really big ass-kicking, shut-down Spec Ops heroes. Uncanny coordination, chance to gain an extra turn when an ally attacks. Really big. Cosmic energy, which increases his defense and restores stamina, and he is a very stamina-based character and hungry for it. Big. Takes half damage from energy, radiation, and fire attacks. Generates cosmic energy every turn. Nearby energy attacks generate cosmic energy, so you can pair him up with anybody who does energy attacks, like Vision is good. Scarlet Witch is good. Any of the gear that you can use on the agent that is an energy attack, including the counter item of the Cosmic Cardinal, counter and additional attack. Really, really good setup. Massive damage potential. He is one of the first characters that shuts down the counter class that he's weak to. The fact that his plasma spheres do not have a cooldown and do exhausted and do pressure points, which is good. You can go back to Mockingbird, who can exploit those. So he has some synergy, believe it or not, with Mockingbird. Shutting down tacticians is great because as a blaster, it means he can do what he wants to do and not have to worry about tacticians getting in his face. It shuts down quick actions on other heroes and other enemy agents in PvP. Shattering Punch, while not doing the most amount of damage in the world, breaks shields and removes buffs, which is really good. Dude, Plasma Wave, what can you say? It's a huge Roar of the North type attack caked into a hero. The more cosmic energy you can feed him, the more damage it does. It exploits Paragon debuffs, which a lot of people can set up, including himself. Channel Energy fully restores the stamina, gives them an instant 5 stack. So typical combat, round 1, Plasma Spheres, round 2, Channel Energy into Plasma Wave, and somebody's dead. He was considered part of the Pesty Killer team. He rips open bruisers. He shuts down his counterclass. Absolute 10 out of 10. While Plasma Spheres is not really going to do a lot of wave clear, Plasma Wave will absolutely destroy things in PvP, and it's extremely good for single target. There are ways to give him that extra turn back that he's going to miss from kicks like a mule if you give him rally, or extra turns from your own team attacking. You can kind of eat the Plasma Wave lockout over there, the kicks like a mule. Also, if you make him unstunnable, he won't lose the turn. Absolute 10 out of 10 character. Havoc is a very, very good hero to try and recruit in Beta 6 as early as you can. If you are sitting in the Havoc Spec Ops, your store will have the Cosmic Cardinal, which I recommend you get, and the Daily Spinner will have that Radiant Shield. And also his Spec Ops gear is, of course, really, really good. Up next, for the Spec Ops after him, is Hank Pym. Pym comes from Spec Ops number 7. He shuts down infiltrators, tacticians, and bruisers. Growing Pains shuts down protector types. So protector bruisers right there. Goliath Punch is fumbling and stagger, which is solid. Army of Ants is neutralized. Shuts down bruisers getting enraged. Also off balance. Shuts down infiltrators. To me, any character who can shut down their counterclass gets an immediate bump up on the scale for me. Havoc was the first to do it. Pym then does it right after him in the fact that he can shut down infiltrators. Also, Army of Ants counts as a summon ability, and it's stealthy. So if you need him to shut down infiltrators to protect your team, he can do it. He doesn't have the ass-kicking potential that Havoc does, but he's generally used in a longer, a wear-down type of game over here. He's got good synergy with Beast for all Hanks on deck. In PvE, he has great synergy with his wife, Wasp. We're going to pretend the whole, hit Wasp in the comic thing, didn't the smack heard around the world. We're going to pretend that didn't happen. We're only going to talk about him as a character, not a human being. But Wasp being pretty evasive and a fun little infiltrator was always a good setup for him in PvP. If you didn't want to use Wasp, the agent, your agent can set him up pretty well with some opportunistic debuffs over there. I definitely rank Pym as a 9. He is not the stone cold killer that Havoc is, but he is great in PvE and in PvP. He has some very, very good setup for himself and other characters. We're not really going to talk about these guys in the terms of PvP defense because there will be no PvP defense in Redux, so you're never having to worry about setting up a defensive team. So we're only looking at this as the lens of PvE and PvP offense. Spec Ops 8 gives us Vision. Believe it or not, continuing the vein of being able to shut down some counter classes over here. We'll talk about that. So Vision is a flyer, so ground attacks will miss him. Energy Charge. That is a bonus to his attack. Gathering Energy grants an energy charge every round, and nearby energy attacks generate the energy charge. So, good synergy with Havoc. Good synergy with Scarlet Witch. Density Shift can get annoying. In Marvel Strike Force, it procs almost as much as Spider-Man's Evasion, so he's really good there. It also procs a reasonable amount here in Redux, and he's one of the first real shifters we get where he can go from the Infiltrator kit to the Blaster kit. I find the Blaster kit is a little bit better. If you can set up burning for him by having somebody else do it or your agent do it, you can begin with Solar Jewel, which really, really nicely exploits burning. That's what the combustible is. Also exploits stun. Chances are you're probably not going to have somebody burning and stunned, maybe, but his burn exploitation is really good. Microwave Pulse hits everybody. It is stealthy, so it can't get protected against. It does not remove him being phased if he is phased. Radiation exposure is a good early game debuff because it helps energy attacks do a lot more damage, including his own. You don't get many mechanical bodies in PvP, so Fried Circuits is not super great for PvP. But the ability to skip the optic beams to get somebody burning and go right into Solar Jewel is extremely strong. We need to go to the wiki really quick to look at his Infiltrator kit. And that is the melee interface. His physical punch does a incapacitation. Intangible Fist has phase disruption. So if he is phased, which he has a passive that says he can go phased, Intangible Fist does a lot of damage. And believe it or not, General Relativity right now in Beta 5.6 is doing a lot of damage. Winded shuts down Scrappers, which is really, really good because he's an infiltrator in this mode. And again, he's shutting down a counter class. So that's some bonus points. The only problem is later on when you have anti-tech attacks like the Mystic, Vision runs into some issue. But again, in the context of Season 1 stuff, and the Mystic kind of doesn't come into play there. So you don't have to worry about his tech side getting shut down too much. But that is something you need to watch for him because his last two abilities in each kit are tech, and it could leave him slightly crippled in combat if he gets downgraded. I rank Vision as a 7 out of 10. Up next is going to be Spec Ops number 9, and that gives us everybody's favorite Pepper Potts, Rescue. Also like Vision, she is a flyer. All allies remove a harmful status effect at the beginning of their turn, but it will not remove exhausted or stunned. Rescue is basically a walking baloney scroll on a stick, or the scroll of Anglob. She had gotten nerfed at one point, and she was part of the infamous stall defensive team of Rescue and Omega Sentinel. Often known for being put on people's defense late in PvP seasons because there was a lot of healing and a lot of tanking and a lot of shields on those teams. And if you went for a full defensive kit and your agent was also maybe like a bruiser and like the biometric ID card that was restoring health, or had a healing item on the team, or the Scroll of Anglob that was removing debuffs and heals, they were a very, very, very tough team to take down. But we're not evaluating Rescue on PvP defense because it doesn't exist. She does winded and off balance, so she can shut down infiltrators. So the trend continues. We've now had multiple Spec Ops characters who shut down their counterclass. Flyby attack is weak damage, but if there's a blaster, she can do it 3 times in a turn. Afterburners gives her an extra turn, and then if she's hitting a blaster, there's the tactical bonus. Protector Protocol magnetizes people. It also sets her up as a tank. Reconstruction Matrix does shields and restores health. And then you have a Rising Up buff in her Fortified. And then Status Reset, which removes buffs from enemies and removes debuffs from you. Extremely, extremely tough to take down character in PvP. She is, I would rank her as overall a 9 if you want a support character, but taking her, I would have given her a 9 if there was PvP defense, excuse me. But in PvE, I actually kind of rank her at about a 6.5 or so. She is a slog to level because she gains no abilities that really help in combat other than the flyby attack. If you were to ISO her through the PKB method, the Pot Kettle Black method, he wants to remind you that you should not just go into defensive characteristics for Rescue, because then she will hit like a wet noodle. You should go into some attack and accuracy so that her flyby attack is actually worth using. She was a pilot for me for a long time. Using her in PvE combat is, I find, a little boring, a little tough, because she doesn't do a lot. But if you want to run a bunch of glass cannons, like another hero and your agent are all about damaging glass cannons, then by all means, Rescue might climb up in the ranks a little bit. But I would say she would have been a 9 in PvP defense, and I would consider her a 6 in PvE usage, and maybe about a 7 in PvP offense for the Redux beta. Coming up next, we have Spec Ops number 10, which gave us Wonder Man. Similar to Rescue, I find Wonder Man really kind of boring to level. I found him to hit weakly throughout his leveling until he really got going and really gets good ISOs, but he has some interesting abilities. He shuts down blasters because he can do impaired. So again, shutting down a counterclass. It's a bruiser shutting down a blaster. He shuts down infiltrators because of winded. No, he shuts down scrappers because of winded, And he also shuts down tacticians because of exhausted. So he shuts down the class he's strong against and the one that he's weak against, and even throws in tacticians under the bus over there. Believe it or not, there was a period of time where Wonder Man was really, really, really good in PvP because he got an ISO that said the molecular reconstruction runs for 2 turns and cannot be removed. Now, what's interesting is Ion Tamer protects allies from single target attacks. The lower his health, the higher his attack and defense become. He's immune to all dots. Really, really solid. But if you give him something, and he also has a chance to, here with the molecular reconstruction, gains health an extra turn when protecting. If you feed him the big and fast EISO for bruisers, and you get the molecular reconstruction debuff going, I have seen, and I have a video on this from back in the day, Wonder Man gets so many turns on the timeline, you don't see anybody else on the timeline. It's all just Wonder Man turns because of all of the extra turns he gets from protecting. Big and fast, when combined with this, especially when you get the AISO for it, it was crazy. However, AISOs, EISOs, we're all talking later in the game. We're evaluating them only for Season 1. I would give Wonder Man a 7 because he is a little weak to take into PvE. You might find that there are better tanks for PvP when you're doing your offense. Kind of like some versions of Colossus and Cap, you actually have to use the ability before he gains his protection. But you can start him off with the Inceptive Protection ISO when it's available. And Big and Fast really, really does Wonder Man wonders. Rising up into the Finest Hour is good, so that means you can feed him buffs from the Agent, and eventually, like when you get Neurotrope in the game, he loves that. But again, early game, Wonder Man, kind of mid. Give him a 7. And finally, that brings us to Spec Ops number 11, the end of Season 1, and that gives us Damon. Damon has some really, really good synergy with his booby sister over here. These two are fun. He would, of course, also go on to be worthy, but that is much, much later in the game. He takes reduced damage from dots, which is fine because he likes to dot himself. When he's burning, he counters people with fire damage. Good for, say, somebody like Magic, who does that fiery retribution. While he has Dark Void on himself, all attacks restore health. He has the Netharium Spire, 50% chance to nullify magic attacks against all allies. That is really, really solid. When he was his worthy, that was an amazing passive, but it's also extremely good when it's on Damon himself. Restores stamina and gains Burning and Dark Void after nullifying the magic attack. So, even if he hasn't taken a turn yet, depending upon what the enemy team does, he can have his full kit ready before he even does anything. So he's kind of like Magic in that he and Magic both like 2 things happening on themselves, and then they're powered up. For Magic, it's the Soul Charges. For him, it's Soulfire, Dark Void. From Hell's Heart, I stab at thee. One enemy gains Soulfire, amazing debuff because it takes away buffs. He then is burning. Cloaked in Shadows is an extremely good buff. Skittering Darkness, 50% chance to avoid attacks, and your attacks become stealthy. So even though you have a 50% to dodge, making the team stealthy is absolutely amazing. Great setup in PvE and also PvP offense. He gets Dark Void on himself, but his 2 debuffs, Burning and Dark Void, bump up his summons over here. And Purifying Flames heals people. It removes and even prevents debuffs, so it's sort of like Iron Fist over there, but it doesn't remove Burning or Dark Void from himself. So you don't have to feel bad about using it on himself. If it's low, he still maintains the debuffs that are extremely important. He is one of the few things early in the game that actually gives out Despair. And believe it or not, one of his summons exploits not only affliction debuffs, dots, which you would expect, it actually also exploits Paragon debuffs. So he could be good with somebody like Havoc or Bobby, Mockingbird, and everything. So he's got some very, very interesting team ups. Making Mockingbird or Havoc stealthy from Cloaked in Shadows is great. Good, very, very similar combat style to his sister Satana. He goes well with other burning characters like Human Torch and everything like that. Pretty solid character. Blaster is good in the early game against a lot of bruisers. He cannot shut down tacticians, though, as he has no exhausted. So you do have to watch for that. I would rank him as a very, very solid 7, maybe even bordering on 8, but I think 7 is really, really clear over there. So to sum everything up, I would give the lowest 2 rankings to Ghost Rider and Valkyrie. I would give the highest rankings to Havoc, and then right after that, Pym. Again, when comparing Pym to Havoc, I would not consider Pym to be a stone cold killer that Havoc is, but Pym is really, really good at setting up a lot of debuffs and also shutting down a lot of classes. Plus, in all honesty, the foot stomp over there is it is pretty damaging, and the fact that he and Wasp have some really, really good synergy that play off each other and they get to exploit each other with the fist bump and the foot stomp. That's why I give him an 8, and why I would recommend Havoc and Pym as the 2 highest ranked characters, and Ghost Rider and Valkyrie as the 2 lowest. Coming in the mid, I would have Mockingbird at 7, Emma as 8, Magic as 8, Vision as 7, Rescue as really kind of a 6, because she's so tough to level and kind of just obnoxious to use in day-to-day combat. Wonder Man at a 7, and Damon at a 7. If you got any disagreements, definitely tell me below. Re-rank them in the order, or re-rank them on 1 to 10 down below if you disagree with mine. I would expect there's going to be a lot of Ghost Rider fans out there who are going to get enraged at this, but if you are one of them, go ahead and let me know down below. We'll talk about it. So thanks for checking out this video, everybody. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you later.